Giovanna, thank you so much for joining us on the MedTech20 today. It's a real pleasure to have you on and looking forward to having a really interesting conversation with you. I see that, it looks like you're also working from home in lockdown. Am I right about that?
No, I'm in the office.
Ah, you're in the office. Okay.
I'm in the office, yeah.
Uh,
I'm in a rather, I moved office actually to A, save money, and B, be slightly more convenient to home. But I am the only person in the building, apart from receptionist, who is ecstatic when I walk in the morning because she's got somebody to talk to.
Interesting. Okay, good. Giovanna, I watched your recent interview with Amanda Thompson talking a little bit about, more kind of the entrepreneurial side of your life as opposed to Forte Medical, let's say. Super interesting, but, for those who may not be overly familiar with Forte Medical, perhaps this would be a good starting point to hear a little bit about your business, the innovative solution that you're bringing to market, and a little bit about that journey and where the business is today.
How long have you got? um, my brother and I started work on this back in 2002 when he won a Medical Futures Innovation Award. And Medical Futures was, back in the day, kind of the Oscars of healthcare innovation awards. They used to have Janet Lumley there and Rory Brown and all sorts of people. So that was marvellous. Then he asked me to help him commercialise it. Now, at the time, I was running a PR business. I've worked for myself since I was 26, so I'm kind of used to getting things going and moving them along and all that. So I did offer to help him. And then in 2006, we got funding from the London Development Agency, their Gateway to Investment programme. We shows how I had never been in this world before. I thought 150 grand would get us to market. Yes, everyone kind of rolls around laughing. Anyway, here we are 4 million later. And we are in market. We're selling to the NHS, we're selling in the States, we're on the drug tariff for prescription services. And we've recently been approved for a AHSN network support for national scale up.
Oh,
so that's really good. That's kind of the holy grail, so I'm really happy about that. And we're also starting to work with Test Card, which is a digital dipstick to create a home urine testing kit. There are home urine, digital test kits around, but they, if you don't have the midstream, which is what all the guidelines say you need, then however swanky your dipstick is, if it's not going to check the right sample, then you're simply amplifying a potentially unreliable result. So together with Test Card, we aim to produce the most accurate, most efficient home urine testing kit that will be fulfilled by a medical fulfillment agency, so that, for instance, a GP or midwife can press a button and the kit will arrive with the patient. They can use a digital app to send the result back to the patient record. And then ideally, and I have a couple of conversations lined up, we will talk to a remote dispensing service who can dispense and then deliver the antibiotics or whatever is prescribed. So that we're really aiming to produce a turnkey, really top-end turnkey solution for NHS primary care to look at routine urine testing. I mean, urine is the most common routine diagnostic liquid. Yeah. So that should massively reduce footfall in GP surgeries, face-to-face visits and so forth. And also there was a Department of Health report published last month called Diagnostics, Recovery and Rebuilding. So everything that they've said in there, we meet, which I've read through this massive document, and every page I got happier and happier. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, what an interesting trajectory so far, and we're going to get into a few of these talks in more detail as we go through the conversation here. When you set out on this venture, obviously it kind of started really looking at solving a real world problem in urine collection, particularly for women, which I know it can be challenging for anybody. But I think that the product that you're bringing to market solves some of these issues in kind of real world terms. But you also told me about some of the other issues that you discovered along the way that the PZ midstream device could solve in terms of cost to the NHS or whatever partner group you might have, accuracy of testing, which you just touched on a little bit, but maybe you could tell us a little bit more about some of the issues that the PZ midstream device is solving.
For sure. It transpires that when my brother invented PZ, he really wanted to solve the problem of women getting their hands dirty and the toilet environment dirty, and also contamination. Now, it turns out, like with many brilliant genius things, there are other hidden benefits. So what we found is that with the amount of reduced testing, reduced contamination and reduced false positives that PZ delivers, the savings are about £7 per patient. So calculating that nationally, there should be between 70 and 80 million pounds worth of savings just on retesting alone. And then if you then take into account the false positives that are not going unnecessarily to the lab. So false positive is when your dipstick will respond to the contamination, tell you there's something wrong when there isn't. So that's false positive. So we kind of reduce those very dramatically. But that also means you're reducing your prescribing. Now, back in the day, AMR wasn't, it was an issue, but it wasn't written about as much as it is now. It wasn't, people weren't as aware of it. And now you've got committee after committee after committee talking about this. And this is where I realized that health innovation suffers, because health innovation, by its very nature, is preventative. Now, preventative medicine is obviously what we all need, because it will improve health outcomes, long-term public health and everything else. The problem is that the people making everything for treatment don't really want that to happen. And they're the big companies that have people on advisory boards and helping create policy. So there's a bit of a dichotomy there as to how you introduce innovative prevention when the system is very largely influenced by the people who would rather provide treatment. Right. However, the AMR side of things, 50% of the global rise of antimicrobial resistance has a urinary source. Now, I was staggered when I saw this. So you have all these people being given antibiotics they potentially don't need, which is going to make the bugs involved more resistant to antibiotics. Yeah. So that's a huge benefit that PZ delivers that we hadn't appreciated before. And now with COVID, I mean, when COVID hit, we had record sales in March and they fell off a cliff because no one was going for their GP surgeries or to their antenatal appointments. So we sat and thought, well, we could use this at home, which is how we ended up putting the home test together. And, you know, that goes with my sort of belief that out of every crisis comes an opportunity, and you just have to make sure you find it and find the right paths to deliver it. So you've got your cost savings, got your AMR, you've got giving people the right antibiotics. So those are very major points that the NHS is now intent on focusing with their sort of, you know, diagnostics forward plan, which makes me very happy.
Yeah, fantastic. And doing urinary testing at home is not something that's particularly new either.
I mean, dipsticks have always been available for people to buy and use at home. Yeah. I mean, we've had instances in antenatal clinics where midwives have said they've had a particular patient who dips at home and then they bring the sample in or the dipstick in. And they said, you know, she had a lot of glucose, but she seemed all right and they couldn't work out what was wrong with her, and they got her back again and again and again. Now, this is going to cost £60 each time she comes back, let alone for the testing and the time and everything else. And then they gave her a PZ to use, and her sample came back, you know, clean as a whistle. And they said, well, how have you been collecting urine before this? Have you not been doing it into the little universal container? And she said, oh, I can't get it into that. No, I wash that jam jar and I do that.
Oh my God.
Hallelujah. I was in a Urogynae clinic in Southampton a few years ago, and women were coming in with their urine in washed out spice jars and all this kind of stuff. And you know, if this lack of diligence were applied to blood analysis, you know, everyone would be utterly baffled by that. And yet with urine, they think, oh, it's just urine, we can do it again. But the cost of doing it again and the implications of getting it wrong are too important to overlook anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all those what are perceived as little visits to the GP, I mean, they can add up to astronomical costs.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They do. In fact, in Watford, our antenatal clinic in Watford, they calculated that when they introduced PZ for this trial, they saved 44% of nursing time, not filling in repeat requests and letters and all this sort of stuff to get people back again. I mean, that's a lot of time.
Yeah,
And in Wales, they had a reduction, 66% reduction in lab spend because
wow.
of the unnecessary samples they were not sending to the lab. Now, the labs aren't going to be very happy about that, the ones that charge per sample, but the NHS ones that are, are given a budget and have to work within that, they're going to be utterly relieved, much like
Yeah.
people.
Okay, so one of the things that I was thinking about, I'm sure you've thought about this too, but why do you think that a product like this has not been on the market previously? I mean, is it because the bigger device manufacturers may see this kind of as, well, that's the way it's always been, and that's what people are used to, or maybe it's something they don't see as quite as significant, or maybe even a commodity product that isn't necessarily worth putting the R&D into for a business of that size. What are some of the reasons that you think that something like this has
All of the above.
okay.
we were approached way back by one of the big diagnostic companies, and it's back in 2013 or 14, and they tested PZ in their labs and said it's even more efficient than you say it is. They made us an offer that we thought was quite ridiculous, because they forecast the sales in Europe alone to be 300 million. And our lawyers said, you've got to be very careful, because you're threatening their existing not as good products that are on the market, and they'll just want to get hold of yours and shelve it.
Right.
Anyway, in the end, we didn't agree on anything with them. So that was it. But they did interestingly say, it's cost you $1 million to get this far. It would have cost us at least 3 times that, because of the resources we would have thrown at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one reason. The other is that urine has basically been overlooked. People just say, well, it's only urine, let's redo it. And the other is that because people are peeing into a little container, so I'm going to get one here, into something not much bigger than that. That's about between 5 and 10p, depending on how good the procurement person is who's bought it.
Yeah.
Whereas the peasy is, closer to £1. So
Right.
they're all saying, well, why are we going to spend, 10 times on something that gets thrown away? Well, because it means you're not spending between £7 and £8 on a retest.
Yeah.
And in terms of it, we're asked a lot about the sustainability of this single-use plastic. And it's polypropylene, so if it's incinerated in clinical settings, it won't give off anything toxic. And in domestic settings, I guess as long as it's washed out, it could be recycled. We need to give that a little bit more thought for the My Midstream kit.
Okay.
But yes, it's overlooked. This was ahead of its time. It was my brother, Dr. Vincent Forte, who was a very diligent GP, who just thought, why are these women coming back? I'm following guidelines. I'm giving them empirical antibiotics before, And then the other thing is that with guidelines, you have UTI guidelines that still say prescribe a broad spectrum antibiotic for 3 days. And if that doesn't work, then culture and bring the patient back.
Right.
Whereas the antimicrobial resistance guidelines say never prescribe until you know what the bacteria is that you're treating.
Yep.
So you have an anomaly between 2 sets of guidelines, and what a GP is supposed to do? Well, they're going to do the thing that they hope treats the patient first time.
Right.
Now, this happened to me last year. I was given a broad spectrum antibiotic. It didn't work. I was given the same one for longer in a stronger dose, and I ended up in hospital with borderline sepsis.
Oh, wow.
So, these things have to be very carefully monitored and very carefully done. And prescribing is really a very hot issue at the moment, because if you get it wrong, you don't want people going to hospital with sepsis.
So I understand that you're already part of the NHS framework. You've been running a number of clinical trials. I think you've just concluded one in Wales, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe you could tell us a little bit more about some of the partnerships you're working on in both the UK, Europe, and elsewhere.
For sure. Yes, we are on the NHS framework. So any nurse or GP sitting at their desk can go on and buy it, and it'll be with them the same or next day through the NHS supply chain. We are with Bunzl, so the private healthcare people can order as well. So all of that's been sorted out, and now with AHSN support, we hope to sort of amplify the use of PZ in primary care. The Public Health Wales trial we did, I touched upon earlier. We've given them a 66% saving on lab spend. They're not sick. They've introduced a triage system, which interestingly is one of the things the new diagnostic recommendations say they need to do more of. So the patient will phone up with a UTI problem
Yeah.
presentation, and they'll be triaged over the phone. Depending on what the algorithm for that, the answers for that throw up, they'll be asked to come in with a full bladder, use PZ. That gets sent to the lab. It'll get dipped and sent to the lab, but they won't issue a prescription until they've got the culture back from the lab.
Right.
So that's that's a big step. It seems like a small step, but it's a big step change in the whole primary care diagnostic and treatment of UTIs. And that's interesting. And also for antenatal care, because you don't want to be prescribing antibiotics to a pregnant woman, because that would affect her and the baby, and can also instigate AMR in the child problems later on, and gestational diabetes and propensity to obesity, according to some papers. So the implications of all of this are quite major. In the States, they have started selling PZ, and we've got a lot of interest from some of the big healthcare providers. They're very keen to get their hands on the My Midstream kit, because that can be white labeled by the providers. It can be white labeled by the retailers, because it's perfect for retail. And we'll be looking at that here as well. So there's opportunity everywhere. We're closing or looking to close our investment round. We went out at the end of last year for 3 million. We've got over 1 million of that in. We're looking for 2. And that will help us amplify our work on My Midstream, on home testing, on all the digital stuff, and also start developing new products. Testcard, who we work with, they have a early stage diabetes test strip, which we could do as well. So there's an awful lot to be done. I need the money to do it, and then we'll transform primary care.
There you go. That's the main objective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Just on that subject, I mean, what have been some of the objections, let's say, that you faced along the way, whether that be in the clinical trial process, or from the healthcare systems that you've approached with?
It's attitude, really. It's this isn't a problem. We don't, and the thing is, it's the biggest problem that the NHS didn't know it had.
Right.
It's not, a urine collection isn't a priority. Well, it might not be, but AMR is, infection control is, patient safety is, right first time diagnostics is. So all of those things are important, and they boil down to specimen collection and quality of that specimen. So it's perception and attitude towards something very basic that people don't understand as an issue. So we've kind of highlighted all of that.
Yeah.
Also, it's only urine. It doesn't matter. And also, I mean, even some of the media doctors, because I met one of them, one of the BBC media doctors, and he said, yeah, this looks very good, but no, I wouldn't use it. And I said, why not? He said, well, it's not a problem, is it? I mean, people work their hands, so what? Well, how much has the NHS spent on Clean Your Hands campaigns in the last 15 years? And they're still asking women to pee all over theirs in order to produce a diagnostic sample that they might not get diagnosed from.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes no sense at all. And then this particular doctor, when I emailed him last time, or on Twitter, and I said, look, we've got these results from Wales, would you take a closer look at this? And he just tweeted back to me saying, no, but I do like a trier. And you think, oh, aren't you supposed to be a sort of medical bellwether for the public on behalf of the BBC? And all you're doing is completely ignoring something that you don't want to be associated with because it's we.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing, because I mean,
I do like a trier. It's like, what have you ever done in your life to change the world, really?
But you'd think that sanitation would be a priority, and also
You would, wouldn't you?
the kind of, I hate to use this kind of terminology, but the customer experience just broadly across all industries is so much at the focal point, and we're talking about patients and healthcare. I mean, surely.
Yeah, and urine, it'll contain E. coli, it'll contain gonorrhea, I mean, all sorts of rubbish that you really don't want to have anything to do with. And, someone wheeze on the hand, if there isn't a basin in the toilet with them, and even then they still have to turn the taps on most of the time. I know non-touch is coming in, but, or they have to open the door and then turn the taps on, and this bacteria is going everywhere.
Yeah. And in today's world, we're more conscious about this stuff than ever before. So. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. From a regulatory perspective, are there unique challenges that would apply in bringing this product to market? I mean, you're talking about different geographies, etc., but maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the regulatory implications.
Well, we've had a lot of clinical trials, and you need to be listed with the MHRA for that. We're a class 1 medical device, which means it's non-invasive and it's a collection device. It doesn't diagnose or do anything on its own. So it's class 1. So we got that listing. We have to manufacture to ISO 13485. We have to be CE marked. We have a lot of regulations, and now we're looking at putting a kit together. That's going to require a whole load more regulatory work, because with the test kit, it becomes an in vitro diagnostic kit. So I'm getting a lot of help from the MHRA Innovation Office, actually, which is really good. So we'll find out from them exactly what we need to do. I have a new regulatory agency on board who specialises in home testing kits, you know, that are clinically proven. So we'll get all that together. But, you know, the investment in regulatory for my midstream is going to be around £20,000, just that piece of work alone. So there's always a lot of work to be done. There's tooling, there's, you know, all this kind of stuff. And also, every time we finish making a batch of PZs, we send them off for bioburden testing to make sure that there's nothing on them that will impact the quality, you know, the outcome of the diagnostic sample.
Interesting.
So there's always a lot to think about and keep on top of. But, you know, we have Boddington's Plastics in Kent, and they're brilliant manufacturers. They look after the regulatory stuff. They're on the ball. They do everything that, I mean, and they're shareholders of ours. And we're very lucky to have incredibly good partners to help us with all of that.
Oh, good. Good. Obviously, 2020 has been quite a unique year in a variety of different ways. And, you know, as it pertains to healthcare, COVID is the topic of choice, I suppose. But what kind of impact has that had on your business, or maybe what are some of the key lessons that you've learned along the way as, you know, a business that is growing and building?
Well, as I said earlier, they you know, our sales fell off a cliff in April, and we were on a really nice trajectory upwards. So that was a shock. And then we had to really look at how long this might last, what we were going to do about it. We came up with a home testing kit, and that obviously takes the gestation for that's quite a long time to get the right partners in. So there was that. There was working practice, working from home. How do we manage that? I then went into our old office and thought, this is an absolute dump. What are we doing here? It's costing a lot. So I gave notice, and I found, you know, went online and found the one I'm in now, which is cheaper, it's better, it's with a very, very good service office company. Everything's fantastic. So we really, it prompts us to have a wholesale look at the business. Well, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Are we running efficiently? We need to preserve cash. What do we need to do and not need to do? And that all happened in about a week. I mean, there wasn't much else that could come out. So, you know, you sit down and you write a list of all the things that are going to be impacted by the lockdown, by COVID and everything else. Yeah. So there was everything from working practices to training for people who are adopting PZ. How do we train them? And we'd normally send someone along and who'd go through it with them. It's very easy, but it just makes the customer happier if you are there to engage with them. Yeah. So we've produced an online pzmidstream.com training and adoption portal that has frequent questions and everything else. So we did that. So all of those things combined, and then coming up with the home test as a solution to help the NHS reduce footfall in primary care settings. All of that, I think, has given us huge opportunities that we may have missed. You know, often as you're prompted to make things better or make changes, you tend not to, because, you know, you're busy doing things. But actually COVID gave us the opportunity to do that. And I've read so many diagnostic papers now, and pathway forecasts and all this kind of stuff. But you know, it's helped our business a great deal. I mean, you know, cash is still under wraps, you know, it still has to be preserved. And, you know, finding investment has been a lot harder because other people aren't investing at the moment, and we tend to focus on angel investment. We're EIS approved. So, but all of that actually is picking up now. We've got 2 or 3 quite decent investors looking at our 2 million that we're looking for. And we expect to have, you know, money started coming quite soon, which is good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So good. You know, I think as we kind of wrap up here, Giovanna, one thing I always like to ask is, you know, what, and maybe this is a little bit of a difficult question, given the, you know, where you are with your business at the moment, but what can you tell us about the future of Forte Medical at the moment? I mean, are there some things you can share with us? I don't know, in terms of product development or anything you could share about the future plans, let's say.
We have plans for a whole product pipeline, a whole new range of products, and it is called the Specimen Collection because each of the products is a specimen collection.
Right.
Device. And we're looking at drugs, we're looking at diabetes, we're even looking at stool
Okay.
And we're looking at, we have designed PZ First Stream, which will help certain early stage cancer tests for bladder, prostate, testicular, cervical, ovarian, even lung. There's a lot of research going on at the moment in those areas, and that requires quite often the first concentrated 8 to 10 ml of urine, because the biomarkers apparently, and this is a lay interpretation, the biomarkers are heavier, they tend to sit at the bottom of the bladder and they'll come out in that first 8 to 10 ml of urine, which then has to be concentrated and not diluted with midstream or anything else. So we have designed PZ First Stream, and we're looking for partners to develop it with, so that their tests become more guaranteed to be accurate, and it'll improve the efficacy and everything else, and then that device will go with the test. So if there are any researchers out there working on that, listening, please get in touch. So yes, the specimen collection will be rolled out over the next 3 to 4 years.
Wonderful. So on that final note, what is the best way for people to reach out to you? Is it to go to your website?
LinkedIn, website, Giovanna at forte-medical.com. Anyhow, my number should be on the website. It's on my LinkedIn profile. I'm pretty easy to get hold of. And I will always have a conversation, because it's always worth having a conversation, because you never know where it's going to lead, do you?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's how we got connected. So, so wonderful. Thanks so much, Giovanna, for sharing all that you have today. It's a real pleasure to hear.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, to be honest. It's been great.
You're most welcome, and I'm super excited to hear how the things develop over the years. I think you've got a really, really great and useful product that there's demand for. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.